So folks, welcome. My name is John Meredith. I am your instructor for the Observability Fundamentals class. And I hail from Bedford, New Hampshire, so I'm on the US East Coast, working out of my office. What you see behind me is my office. And I've been with Sumo a little over 2 years, and I've worked in IT for 30, 40 years. As DBA, as programmer, as a network admin, as an IT manager, and all that fun stuff. Hey, Rob, welcome to class. And Eric, welcome to class as well. So anyway, just getting started, folks. You didn't miss anything. My only ask of you, most of you have been in class before, is that if you've got a question, please feel free to ask. I can tell you from experience that your question helps 3 groups of people out. Right? One, you help out you ask your question, you get your answer, you win. So it's real simple. But your question also helps us instructors out because it tells us what's really important to you. And so I would encourage you to feel free to ask those questions because this isn't about us, this is about you. And then the third group of people that benefit typically is everybody else in the room, because somebody will ask a question and somebody else will say, oh, that's a great question. I've got something I want to dovetail on with regards to that and that sort of thing. So, it just cascades. And so I would encourage you to ask your question, pure and simple. So I'm being assisted here by Odell Gordon. Odell, you want to say hi, sir?
Good morning and welcome. Let's get ready to learn something fun in the observability fundamentals. All yours.
Thank you, sir. Apologize, I just grabbed a bite of bagel. Shouldn't have done that. Anyway, let me go ahead and turn off the recording here, the video recording, and let's go ahead and go to town. So observability fundamentals, again, if you get questions, feel free to let us know. Our goal here, we are going to talk about the components that make up the observability solution. Things like root cause explorer, things like tracing, things like service map, things like spans. So we're going to talk all about cool stuff like that. We're also going to talk about the 3 pillars that make up observability solution, namely metrics, tracing, and logs. And you'll see that in the form of a test question. Metrics, tracing, and logs are the 3 pillars of our observability solution. And then we're going to talk about various tools and techniques. Like I said, the root cause explorer, talk about service map, talk about tracing, talk about spans. And I apologize for the dog barking in the background. And we're going to do a hands-on lab, actually 4 hands-on labs to walk through some of the cool stuff here. Okay. So again, here's our game plan. We're going to talk about what is observability. What do we mean by observability? We're going to talk about, like I said, metrics and root cause explorer, do some labs, do some tracing, show you some tracing. We'll do a lab on tracing. As you can see, we've got a fair number of labs here to go through. And of course, we'll spend 2 hours doing this. And when we're done with this, we will give you a chance to do the certification exam. So it is a brand new certification exam. And so there are less questions you need to pass, but I'll get to that in a little bit. If you do take the certification exam today, as most of you probably know, if you take it and pass it, you can fill out this form and we'll provide you this link at the end of the class. And we will send you a $15 Uber Eats voucher. So it may take us up to a couple days to process that, but we will send you that voucher just so you guys are aware of it. And so who says you can't have a free lunch, right? So there you have it. So what is observability? Some people think in terms of Sumo Logic, and our continuous intelligence platform being a logs and metrics tool. And that's true, but observability to us is so much more. Observability, I want to be able to see across my environments, right? If you're on AWS and you've got a bunch of different environments, prod, dev, QA, across a bunch of different regions, try to see across all that, even with AWS reports and stuff, can be very difficult. We want to provide for you a single pane of glass where you can go across and see everything, see your environment, see your services, see everything. Now, those of you who've been with us before, you know that we can focus on operational intelligence as far as Sumo Logic is concerned, see how your environment's doing, your systems are up and down, that sort of thing. We can look at security. We can also look at your business intelligence, right? We can see, what people are accessing on your website, what your customers are purchasing. Anywhere where we have log and metric data, we can process that, create visualizations, create queries, and see that, right? Again, Sumo Logic is born on the cloud, raised on the cloud. We're scalable. We'll scale up and scale out for you as you need to. We've got a bunch of machine learning applications, bunch of application programming interfaces that you can use if you're a programmer and you want to make calls through our web service and invoke certain things like maybe install a collector or create a user or do various other things that you can do programmatically with APIs. We've got a bunch of advanced analytics. Those of you in the search mastery class saw that. We have log reduce, log compare. We've got outliers, all kinds of neat functions that you can use. Probably the most important thing on this slide is the security and monitoring. As you've heard us say, we work with great rigor to maintain our SOC 2 compliance, our CSA STAR compliance, our PCI compliant. We are FedRAMP moderate authorized. So we have achieved that this past year, as well as HIPAA and Privacy Shield. So, and of course on here, your data comes from a wide variety of environments and systems. So I'm not gonna beat on this slide too much. Now, for us, observability is more than, oh, gee, we got a problem, right? So let's say we got the Sumo Logic coffee app. Sumo Logic coffee is just like another brand of coffee you might be familiar with. It has green logos, has locations all over, but they're copyrighted. So rather than using them, we are going to create our own little Sumo Logic coffee app, which of course serves a great cup of coffee. And you'll see a little conversation about Sumo Logic coffee here going forward. But, you know, typically when people think of observability, they say, gee, if there's a problem, notify me, generate alert. For us, observability is far more than that. We want to be able to dig in and understand what's happening. We want to see transparently across our environment, through our systems, whether we're looking at dashboards and we're looking at logging and notifications, whether we get alerts or not alerts. We want to be able to see across this, and we want to be able to find the root cause analysis of these issues. So our focus is going to be looking at root cause analysis. Also, if we're doing transactions like a coffee system where, you know, somebody places an order and then they grind the beans and all that stuff, we can see all the transactions. We can see where the transactions break down. So that's traces. So for us, that's what observability is. We want to be able to see the root cause and understand exactly what happened, and then be able to take that action to fix it, and then of course, repeat as necessary. So for us, observability is more than just telling me there's a problem. We want to be able to understand what that problem was and how we can fix it. Sorry, folks, I just coughed there a little bit. Wanted to mute that. The three pillars of our observability solution are, of course, logs, where we can find out why things have occurred, metrics that typically tell us what has occurred, what's going wrong, things like that. And then, of course, tracing. Tracing allows us to see a transaction in process, and we can see where it's breaking down. So that's going to be our three pillars of observability. And as I said before, you'll see that this is a test question. So I want to give you a heads up. Now, for every company out there, the holy grail of success is the customer experience. I don't care if you're an airline, I don't care if you're a healthcare provider, I don't care what business you're in, you want your customer to have an outstanding customer experience. Now, that starts on a foundation of reliability. Your systems have got to be reliable. You've got to be able to depend on them, right? They've got to be rock solid. Then they've also got to be available 24/7, right? People do the darndest things to have a good customer experience. I want the system to be up and available 24/7. It's got to have great performance. If the performance is horrible, I'll go someplace else. And of course, in today's world, it's got to be very, very secure. Now, here's a couple of interesting nuggets for you. As far as availability, they have found, research has found that 100 milliseconds, which is 1/10 of a second of downtime, reduces e-commerce sales by 1%. 0.1 second downtime reduces your e-commerce by 1%. Pretty significant. As far as performance, if at half a second of latency, if it's a little slow, half a second can drop your traffic by 20%. And then, of course, here's one of my favorites. Denial of service attacks are anticipated to double to 14.5 million here by the end of 2022. So interesting statistics here. So obviously, we want to be able to see across these. We want to be able to provide solutions across these to help you and your company be successful. Okay? Now, some people think observability is really monitoring, right? So I want to be able to monitor and see what's going on. Well, monitoring for us is a small part of observability. Monitoring is collecting the data, displaying the data either in a query or a dashboard, or sending us some sort of a notification something's wrong. But basically, monitoring is going to tell us something is wrong. For us, observability is far more than that. Observability is wanting to do that monitoring, but we also want to understand why. We want to understand and dig into the issues. We want to be able to see the underlying data, the underlying environment. We want to be able to transparently see across our various environments. And with our observability solution, you can do that. So if we look at Sumo Logic, you can think of this kind of as an iceberg. And I really like this iceberg slide because it's not what you see on top of the waterline that's going to cause you problems. It's what's below the waterline that can rip into your ship and cause you great damage. So if you look on the surface, that's typically monitoring. We want to see what's going on. It'll take approximately 20% of our data, right? And we're just trying to, mean time to identify. We're trying to figure out what's going on. Then underneath that, where we want to understand where things are going wrong, we want to be able to diagnose. And so here below the waterline, we want to be able to diagnose, and that's going to require approximately 30% of our data. But ultimately, what we want to do, what you want to do, and what I want to do is we want to be able to troubleshoot. We want to be able to understand exactly what went wrong, why it went wrong, and be able to try to prevent that in the future. So that's called troubleshooting. And of course, that takes approximately 50% of your data. This is the why and the how. And this is something that you want to be able to quickly identify so that you can get things back up and running. And of course, you want to learn from it so that you can prevent it from happening going forward. All right. As far as the capabilities of our observability solution, right? The incident remediation process. Hopefully you have some sort of an incident remediation process within your company. But some of the tools that we're going to use is we're going to be able to look at monitoring, right? By either creating dashboards that you could observe in your network operations center, your security operations center, and you can look at those dashboards, or we have the ability to monitor and write queries. And if those queries happen, we can send emails and other notifications, send it through Slack, through Teams, through whatever, and let you know that you've got a problem. But again, that's only one small part of observability. Additionally, we want to be able to diagnose. And when we diagnose, again, going down this lovely iceberg here, right? When we diagnose, what we want to be able to do is we're going to use things like the Entity Explorer, Trace Analytics, and the Metric Explorer to see what's going on. And you're going to see this in this class. Then finally, we want to be able to troubleshoot. And for that, we're going to use tools like the Root Cause Explorer, our log search, and various other things. So we are going to use these various tools to take us through this observability solution and do a deep dive. Now, today's environments are complex, far more complex than the environments I played with when I was an IT manager. Your database, your data layer down here, you might have relational databases, SQL type databases, or non-SQL type databases, right? Columnar databases and various other data lakes and all that fun stuff. You're going to have a bunch of microservices running, whether they're running in Java, Python, whatever service that they're running on, they're running. And then, of course, you got your APIs, and then you're going to feed this stuff out to your clients. Your clients could be on a client computer. They could be on a mobile device. So the world's gotten a bit more complex. And what we want to be able to see is we want to see across this entire spectrum. We want to see how long things are taking. We want to see how effective we're doing. We want to see how long it takes things to load. We want to basically be transparent across the entire organization, whether we're looking at databases, microservices, the connections, or how it's being rendered to the customer. So again, talking about our observability solution where we monitor, diagnose, and troubleshoot. If you think about it, and by the way, this also makes a great test question here. When we monitor, we're going to look at software level indicators and KPIs and things like that. But in order to identify and monitor, we're going to need to look at logs, metrics, and traces. Again, logs, metrics, and traces. And so this monitoring, we can create alerts, create dashboards, whatever. And ultimately, this is going to take us down into our maybe our Kubernetes or some environment. We're looking at our deployment, our clusters, our transactions. And in order to diagnose this issue, we really need to look at our logs and our traces, And then ultimately that may take us into our service, into our pods, into whatever. And we're going to be able to do some sort of root cause analysis. And we're going to look at our logs, right? Logs always tell us why things have gone the way they've gone, right? So in these 3 layers, like I said, monitor, logs, metrics, and traces, diagnosing, logs and traces, troubleshooting is logs. Again, just want to make you aware of the test questions so that you can do well. And if I get the slide to advance, there we go. Okay. Now, when you're looking at monitoring, diagnosing, and troubleshooting, it depends on your role, but quite frankly, this observability solution that we have has something for everybody. So if you're in DevOps or site reliability engineering, these are the things that you can see using this tool. If you're in software engineering, again, these are the things that you can see across this tool. And if you're in DevSecOps, security operations, again, you can see some of these things through these various levels and these various phases. Okay. So this is the value that our solution is going to provide for you. All right. So we got a little poll activity here for you to play with, and I've got a question for you. So first question, which of the following observability tools make the pillars for our observability solution? Feel free to put it in the chat. Feel free to unmute your mic, answer directly, but I will tell you there's going to be more than one correct answer here. Eric, go ahead.
Oh, that was a misclick. Sorry.
Okay.
Trying to find the chat.
Okay, that's fine too. Josh says logs, metrics, and tracing, and Josh is absolutely correct. So logs, metrics, and tracing are the pillars that make up our observability solution. There you go. Ding, 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 ding. All right. Now the second poll we're going to ask you, I'd be surprised if you have the right answer. Okay. So I'm not expecting the correct answer here, but, and by the way, here's our debrief for this. But the second poll is, when monitoring requests per second in an HTTP service, you notice an abrupt spike in traffic. And that spike in traffic is represented by something here, one of these 3 choices. And so you want to know why it's happening, what's happening in your system. Which of the following observability techniques will provide deeper visibility and understanding the cause of that spike? What am I going to look at to see the value of that spike? I'm trying to give you a hint here to the correct answer. So what do you guys think? Go ahead and put it in the chat box. It's one of these 3. Okay. Okay. So feel free to type something in the chat box. Now, most people tend to say logs because logs tell us why. And ultimately, that's the why. That's absolutely correct. But that's not the answer I'm looking for here. And the intermediate thing that we're going to see is actually metrics. Metrics is what's going to help us understand and see that value of that spike. The question is, if I see a spike, I see spikes all the time. What determines whether or not that spike is serious or not? Probably the value of that spike, right? If it goes up 10%, I don't really care. Goes up 100%, probably care. Goes up 500%, really care. So metrics, that quantifiable value, is what is going to help me understand that I need to investigate that spike and understand what's happening here. Okay. So that's going to lead us into this conversation about how we're going to use metrics and something called the root cause explorer. Now, many of you, actually, let me stop this for a second. And let me just go ahead and open up my Sumo Logic environment just to show you here something here. Okay. The purpose of this class, if you had our fundamentals of search mastery class, we explored the log search map. If you had the metric master class, you've explored this, right? We even showed you a little live tail and all that stuff. But traces, the root cause explorer, the explorer, the root cause explorer, these things right here, most of these things, we don't talk about. This is the class we talk about traces. This is the class we talk about spans, service maps, root cause explorer, as well as our explorer. So this is the class where we're going to talk about that. And that's what we're going to focus on throughout this class. But back to my slides for a second. Our goal right now is to give you an example where we're going to use metrics and the root cause explorer. So when can metrics be your best option in the observability solution? And you're going to find it in the metrics and root cause explorer. So what is the root cause explorer? The root cause explorer is a tool that we have that shows you across your environments what's happening. Okay, what is going on? You can see throughput issues, error issues, bottleneck issues, all of that stuff. These various events of interest is what they're called. And we can filter this. So I'm going to show you this root cause explorer in real time in just a minute. Okay. But it lets us see across our environment how things are related, what's connected to what, things like that. Makes it very, very easy. So we'll see the root cause explorer, and I'm going to walk you through that here in just a little bit. Obviously, I've got a lot of slides here to talk about the different parts of it, and I'm actually going to give you some information here. So just bear with me a second, guys. I'm going to click through these slides. Again, I'll walk you through all of this in just a little bit. Just humor me. Let's go ahead and let's log into Sumo Logic. So in order to see our root cause explorer, in order to see what's going on, we're going to take a trip here. You're going to be a new DevOps specialist with the Travel Logic company. And the Travel Logic company, for those of you who don't remember or may not have heard, people can book travel. They can book flights and cars and all that fun stuff. And it's on a AWS environment. It's all cloud-based services. And so you are a DevOps specialist dealing with this Travel Logic application on AWS. And it uses the following AWS services: the Elastic Load Balancer, the application load balancer. We also support host and EC2 for storage, as well as our DynamoDB. Now, the end users here have experienced an outage in the application with a 5XX error. Could have been a 501, 502, 504, whatever, in the US East 1 region over the last 24 hours. So our mission, should we decide to accept it, is we are going to log in, we are going to take a look at it, we are going to troubleshoot it. And we are going to use the root cause explorer, and we're going to use metrics to identify this. So that's what we're going to do. Now, what I want you all to do is fire up Google Chrome or Firefox, and I'd like you to go to service.sumologic.com. That's service.sumologic.com. And then, of course, the second thing I'd like you to do is pick a 3-digit number. I don't care what number you want. Pick a 3-digit number. If you always wanted to be 007 James Bond, now is that time for you to be James Bond. Okay, 007. But I want you to pick a 3-digit number. And when you go to service.sumologic.com, you're going to log in as Training Plus Analyst with that 3-digit number at sumologic.com. That's going to be the email address. And then the password is learning22 exclamation mark. Learning22 exclamation mark. So again, I'd like you in the chat box to type in what number you're going to take, and I'd like you to raise your hand in the participants window when you are logged in. And if you're having problems logging in, please let us know. So in the chat box, type in your number that you want to use. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Rob. And when you're all logged in, let me know. Again, Eric, looks like you've notified me there. You're all good to go. Just raise your hand. Thank you, Josh. And so I'm going to go ahead and log in here. And again, if you're having problems logging in, let us know. It's a small class. So if you have any problems, let us know. So, but if you would, let me know that you guys are all logged in. Because we're going to do this from a practical perspective. We're going to do this as a hands-on exercise. So is everybody logged in? Anybody having problems logging in? Anybody not logging in because they're boycotting this for whatever reason?
I'm having to log out and log back in because I was connected to my
Sumo environment.
regular one. So
Yep.
hang on.
Yeah, just log out of your environment and log into ours. Yeah. Or the other thing you can do, by the way, is if you want to, you can open up an incognito window in your browser. An incognito window, if you're using Google Chrome, allows you to log into 2 different systems. Otherwise, if you don't use an incognito window, your session information is shared across your tabs. And that's why you're having problems. So Josh, you logged in okay?
I'm getting there. Just one second. Sorry. I have
No
to
worries,
keep
no
looking
worries.
at what I'm looking.
Yep. No worries, sir. No worries. By the way, something else I want to give to you guys in the chat box. The lab guide for this is actually a PDF. So I'm going to upload the lab guide for you. Let me go out here and grab this one here. Okay. So I've uploaded a lab guide. I'm uploading the lab guide now that you can use. Okay. Josh, I assume that means you're logged in. Great. Eric, Rob, how you guys doing? You logged in? And Mood, how you doing there? You getting logged in? Any problems? Again, I realize that some of you may be distracted from work, or you may have issues with work, and so maybe you don't want to log in right now. But if you're having problems, please let us know. Rob, you're all good. Thank you, sir. So, yeah, and Eric, I'm in and ready to go. Excellent. Okay, good. And Mood, again, if you're having problems, let us know. Otherwise, I'm going to assume you're good to go. Now, while I'm here and while I'm in the training environment, and you could be, we want to be in the training environment for this because we have the data set up for these exercises. And again, as I said, I put in the chat box a PDF document. So the first question we always answer and try to answer here is, gee, John, where can I see the slides? Where can I get a recording of this? Where can I get that lab guide? And you may recall from other classes, if I click on the little, I click on the home tab here, and I click on certification. And under certification, if I click on get certified, this is going to take me to this area. Now I see things that maybe you don't see right now, because we disable from the training analyst account the ability to take a certification exam or the ability to take a self-paced course. We want to track who you are, who's taking these classes. And we don't want you to log in as training plus analyst when you're tracking that. We want you to log in with your name. So if you did in your company environment, you logged in, you would see these options. Now, you should be able to see the recorded live training. And if you click on the recorded live training, here is the observability fundamentals search and class. And if you and I click on this, and we have to register for it, which takes but a second. It's a simple click, boom, we're registered.
We're recording the sessions for anybody.
Here is a listen of the class that we previously did. Here are your slides. And here is the student lab guide. So the information we posted up there in the student lab guide, the slides, all this stuff is available to you. And if you don't mind, I'm going to take this URL and I'm going to put it into the chat box. So there you go, trying to make it easy for you to get access to that information. All right. Now I've taken the liberty of opening up this lab guide. Forgive me, I was playing with it this morning, so let me go back to the first page. So if you open up that PDF lab guide, you can see we've got a few pages here. Oops. There we go. So the first thing I want you to do, I want you to log in, right? And you've done that. That's lab 0. You're logged in, good to go. Life is wonderful. In lab 1, we want to talk about this issue we've got with our elastic load balancer and host and all that stuff. So we're going to go back to that scenario that we talked about here a minute ago. So you're a DevOps specialist. It'll show up in a minute, I swear. You're a DevOps specialist, and you are responsible for the following services: your application load balancer, elastic load balancer, your host EC2 stuff, your DynamoDB. And you said here that end users are experiencing an outage in the application with a 5XX error in US East 1 over the last 24 hours. And so we're going to investigate this. We're going to see how Sumo can help us investigate this. That's going to be our mission. So you could, when we go right in here to Sumo, you could just start off with the root cause explorer. So I can click in here under new, and I can click on root cause, and it's going to launch my root cause explorer. And you can see I've got all kinds of circles up here. I got all kinds of stuff. And I'm going to warn you that there's a lot of test questions off of this screen. So how can you answer those test questions? Really quite simple. if you go into our documentation, again, that's help.sumologic.com. Help.sumologic.com will take you to our documentation. And in our documentation, if you look at the various chapters, as I scroll down, there's one here for our observability solution. If I click on my observability solution chapter and open that up, again, my table of contents, whenever I'm in a chapter, my table of contents moves to the left. And under my observability solution, there is something here called my root cause explorer. And if I click on this page for my root cause explorer, you're going to see there is a lot of stuff in this page. And I am here to tell you that this page will probably answer 3 to 4 of your certification questions. Okay. So I would, if I were you, bookmark this page. And because I'm that kind of person, I am going to send you the link for this page so that you can bookmark it or you can have it available for you when you take your exam. So this is where we explain about this root cause explorer. The first thing the root cause explorer does is it's designed to fix 6 troubleshooting concepts. Okay. Concept number 1, if we have abnormal spikes are symptoms of an underlying problem. So we can see with our root cause explorer any abnormal spikes. Now, what am I seeing here in my root cause explorer? On my x-axis is time. This is my x-axis, this is time. My y-axis is drift, something called drift. What the heck is drift? Drift is how far off of my value am compared to its normal value. So here I can see on this purple circle in my environment here, I'm looking at my Cube API server latency. This is about latency. And I can see its value is only about 152% for the last 10-minute window there. So I can see it's a little off, 152%. These up here, my EC2 instances, my bottlenecks, are well off. They're like drift about 1,016%. So they're, again, the higher the thing is on my y-axis, the higher the drift. So I can quickly see the various drifts and stuff in here. So again, my y-axis is drift. How far off from normal am I? And then, of course, my x-axis is time. We go back here to this documentation. So that's one of the 6 concepts. Abnormal spikes are an indication of an underlying problem. Concept 2, correlation in terms of context and correlation of spikes are essential strategies for a root cause explorer. I want to see the relationship between objects. So if I go back here to my root cause explorer, I can see that I've got this error, this Lambda resource error. Right before that, I have this application load balancer error. These are in red, these are errors. Right before that, I had an EC2 instance bottleneck. The orange is bottlenecks. And then right before that, I have my DynamoDB bottleneck based on, if I look at the metric, right throttle events. So I can see the relationships of what you might think are non-related entities across my timeline. So this happened first, this happened second, this happened third, this happened fourth. And so I can see the relationship of things and how they're doing. So it's very powerful for troubleshooting. That's concept number 2. Concept number 3 is connections between my resources and services help me pinpoint my root cause. So very much like concept number 2, here we're seeing what's connected to what, who's connected to who. I can see certain spikes and I can investigate this, and we'll show you some other tools to help you see that a little clearer. Concept number 4, spikes that are earlier or closer to the root cause. So as I troubleshoot, my goal is to walk backwards. The closer I get backwards here, the closer I get to the root cause of what may be causing things. Okay. And yes, I see somebody just joined us. So welcome. You're up. Hope I pronounced that correct. So again, here I'm looking at concept number 4, 2 more concepts to talk about. Concept 5, real root cause requires exploration of your logs and trace data. So this is a nice visual, but we're going to have to investigate more. We're going to have to see what's going on. Remember, my logs will always tell me why things are going on, but this will get me started and take me ultimately to my logs and to my trace data where I can see where I've got certain outages. I can see the behaviors. And then last but not least, concept 6, golden signals. Well, golden signals is something that Google came up with. Google came up with a Google Site Reliability Engineering Handbook, which talks about these golden signals, things like your CPU, things like your network traffic, these golden signals will help us organize this root cause explorer. And so here in our root cause explorer, we have our 6 golden signals: throughput, error, bottleneck, latency, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, as I said, this document, hang on a second, folks, something just kind of got in my way there. This document right here will explain to you all things about the root cause explorer, how we can filter it, how we can use it, how we can do things. So let's talk a little bit about this. I can, if I want to, go up here and I can open up my filters. And if I want to, I can focus on a specific region. Maybe I want to focus on just US East 1. So I can filter by US East 1. Maybe here under entity, I want to look at my different environments, my different entities, or my entity types here. I can look at different things I want to look at, or my account ID. Maybe I want to look at my different accounts. So I can filter this. I can select the values that I want. I can filter by AWS and host. I can filter by Kubernetes. I can filter by my application levels. And if I want to, if I don't want, like, for example, right now I'm filtering on my region being US East 1, I can either do one of two things with that. I can tell it, do not use that filter by throwing the switch in there, and it'll show me all my data. Or again, I can throw that switch back, in which case it will apply this filter or any filter I have in here. If I click the trash can, all it does is reset my filters. It doesn't delete these objects. It simply resets them back to 0. So you can filter based on AWS and host, based on Kubernetes, based on application services. You can also do some filtering here based on positive or negative values, based on a percentage of drift. And remember, drift is what's on my y-axis here. That's my drift. I can do it based on duration. I can specify a range of duration. I can do it based on seasonality and stability. Well, what the heck is seasonality and stability? Well, again, if I go back to this lovely document that I've copied and pasted in here, and if I scroll down, eventually I will see things like seasonality and stability. Here we go. Seasonality of a metric, 0 to 10. Context, false positives. You're going to see test questions on these various things. That's why I want to point it out to you. I want you guys to get it right. And for my student who just arrived, I'll put this back in the chat box for you to make sure you're aware of where this link is. Because like I said, this is going to answer a lot of your test questions. Okay. So you can, I can, we can use this tool to see what's going on. Now, down below here, I've basically taken this 3-dimensional diagram, if you will, where I've got these various entities across my timeline. I've got the same timeline down here at the bottom, but I've turned this into kind of a 2-dimensional. So I can see what elements are stacked on what elements. And so basically it flattens it out. It shows me my events of interest count by time. By the way, if you want to, you can go over here and you can change this to more like a Gantt chart here if you want to. Hang on a second, let me change right here because it's doesn't look like it's playing real well. There you go. You can see it's some sort of a Gantt chart. Or I can turn it back to this. Obviously up here, I can pick my time range if I want. And of course, I can also filter and say, I don't want to see latency or availability or whatever. And you can filter out stuff to see the stuff that you want. Now, I'm going to do this another way. I wanted to show you the root cause explorer. So in the lab guide, if you're following along, the first thing it says is we can show you the root cause explorer. And I can do that. I did that. I wanted to show you the root cause explorer. To troubleshoot this, there's another tool that we have in Sumo Logic. So here under new, I can go to our Explorer dashboard. And our Explorer dashboard, as you can see, I have a bunch of pull downs here. So here I can look at Kubernetes. If you're in Kubernetes, we can see by namespace view, node view, all kinds of stuff. We talk about that in the Kubernetes class. I can look at host and processing views here if I want. I can look at service application views. I can even do something like your real user monitoring. Wouldn't it be cool if you've got a bunch of web servers where I could select real user monitoring and I can see how long pages are taking to load and what the experience is for my users, what the process is from the time we do DNS resolution till we actually load the page. And so you can see the performance of your websites. Now, while that does talk about observability, that's not our conversation for today. What we want to talk about here is AWS observability. And so under Explore By, I want you to pick AWS observability. And remember that we're worried about the prod environment and we're worried about US East 1. So I can select prod US East 1. And now I'm looking at my AWS information from the perspective of prod and US East 1. And here I can see where my users are logging in from, where they're active. I can see my resource usage. I can see my application load balancer and my application load balancer errors here that I can see. I can see any gateway errors here that I have. I can see my EC2 performance, my Lambda performance, my DynamoDB performance, all kinds of neat stuff. Now, this is just one of many dashboards. So if I go over here to the right and I click on dashboards, I see I've got a whole bunch of other dashboards here that I can look at. What we want to do is we want to select our AWS regions events of interest. And when I click on this, it looks just like my root cause explorer. This is not really my root cause explorer. This is a dashboard made to look up like my root cause explorer. And here, when I filter on my prod and my US East 1, I see that I have a series of events. I have my application load balancer error, right? And I see the metric there. If I look at the metric, HTTP code ELB 5XX, and my metric values are about 728% above normal. Now, right before that, if I scroll up here a little bit, I see that I have an EC2 bottleneck. Again, my metric here is CPU load average for the last 15 minutes, and my drift is 996% off of 10 minutes. The width of this is 10 minutes. The height of this is 996. Then before that, I had this DynamoDB table. And if I look at the metric, it says right throttle events. And again, I can see my value here was 91.8 max, 92 minimum, and I'm sorry, excuse me. Average is 91.8, max is 92, minimum is 91. So I can see what the values and stuff are. Now, remembering my 6 golden concepts, this happened, before this happened, before this happened. The farther back I go, the closer I get to my root cause. By the way, if I look over here, again, this is my application load balancer. This again is my EC2 instance bottleneck. And again, this is my DynamoDB. So we can infer from this that the DynamoDB caused this, which caused this. So we're going to start by troubleshooting the DynamoDB. Now, what I can do is, remember, this is a dashboard. This is not my real root cause explorer. And you'll find there's 3 vertical dots here. There's this vertical dot, and then there's this vertical dot, okay? You want in this panel here, this bottom one, open in root cause explorer. So now you're opening and taking this data into the root cause explorer. And again, here I'm looking at my region, US East 1. I'm looking at my account, my specific account information. And if I give this thing a minute, it should show up my results. There it is, starting to load. Still trying to load. And what I will see here over the last 24 hours is a series of these 3 dots, and so forth and so on. And so what I'm going to do is I can focus on these three dots if I want to. I can actually draw a box around these three boxes if I want. Just bear with me a second while there we go. I've got my cursors here, kind of a crosshair, and I should be able to draw a box. There we go. And that will then magnify that information up if I want, so I can magnify that. But most importantly, really what I want to do is I want to click on this DynamoDB. And when I click on this DynamoDB, and let me click away here so I can get rid of this highlighted stuff. I can see here, here's my metric. So again, my DynamoDB was generating a lot of right throttle events. And so when I look at this chart here, when I click on this and look at this chart, I am seeing right now, if I look at my metric right throttle events, it's spiked. It's spiked. So this metric is telling me I've got a lot of right throttle events right now. I'm also looking at what a day ago, which is in green, and 7 days ago, which is in a light blue, and they were fairly normal. So all of a sudden now I've got some issue that's rearing its ugly head. Some issue that's rearing its ugly head. And I can go down here and I can see the details of this. Again, what the metric is, what the drift is, what the values are, what the tags are, all kinds of stuff. So it's telling me I got a problem. Now over here where it says summary and over here where it says entries, if I click on entities, I can go to other entities. In fact, if I go back to my documentation, so in lab 1, they wanted me to show you the root cause explorer, which I did. Then they wanted to go and explore by, select AWS observability, US East 1 prod, and that took us to our US East 1 prod. Then they wanted me to go to my events of interest dashboard, which I did. Here in my events of issue dashboard, I went out here to my real root cause explorer. And again, I'm seeing my 500, my outage 500s, my HTTP errors, and I'm tracing it back here to my, back to my DynamoDB. And then if I go on here to page 6, right, page 6, I can put my cursor over here and see the values, see the tool tips and all that good stuff. Ultimately, what we concluded is that this is caused by this, which is caused by this. So my DynamoDB is what I want to check into. And when I click on that, again, I see this metric information. And if I turn on to page 8, I can zoom in here if I wanted to. I could, I zoomed in earlier and saw my, you can zoom in if you want. But what I want to do is I want to click. Now in the documentation, it says infrastructure. It's not infrastructure. We renamed it to entities. So here in my entities, I've clicked on this. I'm looking at this. And what I can do is I can open this up in the entity dashboard. So this is going to take me back to my Explore. Specifically in prod in US East 1, it's taken me into my DynamoDB. And so here in my DynamoDB, I can see through my various tables here, I can see my read capacity, my write capacity. I can see how things are starting to behave. I can see my write capacity consumed, my read capacity consumed, all kinds of neat and interesting things. Now, again, up here, there are multiple dashboards. So if I click under dashboards, I can look at latency and errors if I want to and see things by latencies and errors. I can also, if I want to, click by events, and that's what we're going to choose. We're going to choose to look at this by events. And here in my events, I can look at my different tables. And in my different tables, I can see where people are connecting, where my errors are, whether they're in create table, describe table, update table, where are these things occurring? Okay. I can see who my top users are, and I can see my resource information and my table events. Now, what I want to do here is actually, I want to go to the second one. I want to go to the Kinesis to Sumo Logic, those errors right there. And here, when I look at my errors, I see that I've got an issue where somebody has provisioned my throughput on my write capacity units, and it's failed. So somebody's trying to do some database tuning for me, and they're having some issues. Okay. And ultimately, that's what's going to cause my DynamoDB issue. Now, back to my directions for a second. So again, we went in here to our events. We're looking here at our events for our specific connector. What we want to do is we can look at top errors, and we can open that up in search. So back here are my top errors. There's these 3 vertical dots. I click on these 3 vertical dots. I can open up the underlying query that makes this up. I can open up the underlying query here, and I can see who the user was that was having these problems. And I can see what are they trying to do here, because they obviously made a change when they updated the table that it didn't like. So they changed the table. They changed to a -1, which basically means unlimited. And now all of a sudden, that's what caused all my problems. So I can talk to these users and find out basically what happened. What did they do? What are they trying to change? Let's change it back so we can fix this problem. So that is basically how we can use this Explorer, root cause Explorer, our metrics to see what's going on. Ultimately, realize that our logs tell us exactly why things are going on. But that is the first exercise. What questions have you? Any questions? Okay. By the way, in the slide here, it talks about the troubleshooting concepts, the 6 troubleshooting concepts. They are on the slide. They are also on that web page I gave you a link to. So we now know what's going on. Now we're going to focus on something else, right? Applications using microservice-based architectures use distributed platforms, right? And so one of the things that we have to understand is we have to understand how those transactions flow across those distributed platforms. And so for that, we are going to use tracing here. So this is a question I'm supposed to ask you, but I'll go ahead and answer it myself. I'll wait for the slide to show up here, right? What observability tool or technique do we think is going to help us with transaction level tracking? That's going to be tracing. And so we're going to talk now in exercise 2 about tracing. So tracing allows us to see what's going on as far as the transaction, all the steps that occur in a transaction. Metrics, right? Metrics typically give us some measure of performance, and they look only for known failure conditions. So I see a spike, then I'll use that metric to investigate it. My logs typically, logs and metrics typically tell me why a specific metric happened. But if I'm having problems with communication between systems and stuff like that, that's where tracing is really going to make things easy for me. So we've incorporated some tracing into our product so that you and I can see basically what's going on. Now think about it, right? A user is shipping a package, right? I could drop it off at any FedEx, UPS, whatever location, and then from there it gets picked up and gets routed. And it could go routing across various different pathways. Or maybe a user's trying to log in. So they go into one of my domain controllers or one of my authentication providers, which then goes to some system, which then goes to, and again, there's redundancy here. So whether we're logging into US East 1 or US West 1 or whatever, there's redundancy here. And so what we want to be able to do, we can see all the possible service to service connections, but we want to see what the individual request path was so that we can troubleshoot and identify what that request path was. So we understand how that particular user was serviced. So we're going to use transaction tracing to see all the steps that happened in this process. Whether I'm logging in, whether I'm making a cup of coffee, regardless of what I'm doing, I want to see all the activity that happened here. And so we have transaction tracing built into our product that you and I can use. So earlier I pointed out in our Explorer, root cause Explorer, we can look at our observability, right? We can look at our infrastructure here. Well, here, when we're looking at transaction type stuff, we're looking more at our application to see what's happening. And again, if you think about shipping a package, I can see all the steps that a package went through, all the different locations and where it was touched. And so I can, again, get a sense for how things are going as far as tracing. By the way, if you're shipping a package, and let's say I'm shipping a package from the West Coast to the East Coast, and let's say it goes to Chicago because that's where it's supposed to go, to Chicago to get to me on the East Coast, but Chicago suddenly has a blizzard or something like that, the shipping company can send it down to Texas, down to Austin or down to whatever, to avoid that hassle. And again, they can dynamically reroute those packages so that I get it on time. Same sort of thing here. We want to see the route that the option took. So whether we're talking about somebody logging in and the route it took, or placing an order, or paying a bill, or whatever, we can see all the transactions that occur in this process and all the things it touches. That's what tracing does for us. So, as I said before, we've got Sumo Logic Coffee, which produces a great cup of coffee. That's its job. Thousands of locations in the world. As I said, it's very similar to a green labeled company that you might be familiar with. It's copyrighted up the right, left, and center. Since we can't violate those copyrights, we're going to create our own Sumo Logic coffee company here. Now, if you ever watch and you go into a Sumo Logic coffee company and you watch the barista, right? Here's typically what happens. Customer places an order. The order is posted to the barista. The barista fires up the coffee machine. The machine checks the bean levels. If the bean levels are good, it grinds the beans. Checks the water levels. If the water levels are good, it adds water. We then dispense the coffee is ready for the customer. The customer then pays for that order. The credit card hopefully is approved or the transaction is approved. Customer picks everything up, picks up their order. They're good to go. Okay. One thing you might have noticed is, I don't know about you, but when I go into a coffee place now, they typically want me to pay before they start making it up. So if there's a problem with me paying, they don't waste the beans, they don't waste the water, that sort of thing. But each one of these services, each step here is a microservice. And so we want to see, as a transaction happens, where that transaction fails, where it's successful, and things along those lines. So we have Abel. Abel's a coffee lover, right? He drinks coffee. And so we can see in our Sumo Logic tracing, we can see exactly how this process works. We can see it from the machine service of dispensing the water and dispensing the coffee, to the payment system and how that all works. We can see how long it took. We have that capability. Where is that capability? Let me stop the slides and let me show you. So here, and actually, let me go back here to my directions. So let me go back to my directions, my lab guide here. We're going to do lab 2, tracing in the Sumo Logic Coffee app. So again, you're going to log in. I'm going to close up all these tabs. I don't need these tabs. Of course, I can close them up all one at a time. Or if I can choose to say, I want to close all tabs. And what we're going to do here is we're going to click on this new blue button. This time we're going to go to something called the service map. The service map shows me all of my transactional information. So in here, I have 2 major transactional systems, some sort of a payment transaction system here, and my coffee lover system here. Okay. And then there's some other errant traces that you'll see if you take the class tomorrow that will actually show you how to set up this tracing. But I'm going to focus on the coffee lover app. And here in my application name, if I want to, I can say I want to see only the coffee bar app. And so now it's going to filter and show me only my coffee bar app information. And when I look at this coffee bar app, you'll see that some of the circles are in red, some of them are in blue. If they're in blue, it means they're running normally. If they're red, it means they're running abnormally. And then, of course, the size of my diameter is the amount of requests per second. So I can, you can, we can see that, I've got this front end where the cashier works and takes the order. They pass it on to this, which then they pass it on to the machine. The machine is going to service it, dispense coffee, dispense water, send it back. And then I'm going to go back here to my cash desk, and hopefully my credit card goes through and I get a cup of coffee. But obviously I'm getting some red indicators, which means I've got some problems. Now, the cool thing about this is that I can pick up and look at any of these errors. So I'm going to look at the coffee service. The coffee service, again, is designed to grind my beans and dispense my coffee. And if I put my cursor over here, again, I can see my KPIs, I can see my latencies, I can see the number of requests, I can see the number of errors. And if I click on this circle, a side window pops out. And again, I can see my latency and I can see my errors and my requests and all kinds of neat stuff in a mini dashboard, kind of a sparkline chart. But more importantly, I can click open in. And if I click open in, I can say, I want to open this up in traces. I want to see the transactional traces that service my coffee service. So again, I clicked here, I clicked open in, I'm going to click traces. This shows me my coffee bar app and all of my coffee services. Now I can see where I've got a high duration, where things are taking a long time. I can see where things are taking a relatively short time. I can see the number of steps, and over here, if I separate this out a little bit, I can see number of errors. Now I'm going to find this one that has 13 errors. And I can click anywhere in here, anywhere I want to in here. And it's going to open it up, and it's going to show this to me as my transactional traces. So here I am looking at my trace. I'm seeing there are 13 error spans. How do I know that there are 13 error spans, or how do I know it's an error span? It's got a red line. Red lines are my 13 error spans. Okay. By the way, I can filter this and say I want to only see the error spans. If I do that, all my non-error spans are kind of ghosted out. They're kind of faded out. Okay. If you don't see that switch, test question. If you don't see that, there's no errors to see, and therefore it's not going to give you that switch. Now, what I'm looking at here is I'm looking at my country bar front end. That's a different color. It's my microservice. I'm looking at my check suite functions. That's a different microservice. I'm looking at this function. I'm looking at this function. These different functions in different colors. And all my country bar, coffee bar front end are shown here in blue. All of this function are shown here in this light blue, and various other colors. Now, what I want to do is I'm going to go down here and I'm going to look for the lowest thing with a red line on it. Okay. And I think it's right here, my machine service. And if I click on this, again, a side window pops out. And on the side window, it talks about what span ID, what trace ID, that we're preparing the coffee. Here's the start time, the end time. Oh, we got a status code of 503. Ooh, cool. Not 200. Doesn't mean everything worked great. 503. I can look at my metadata here as far as what tags and information I'm getting out of this. So I could write queries against these metadata tags if I want to. I can also click on my entities and get a sense for the types of data and the information that's provided in. Now, I'm going to go back to summary here. Remember that these tools are all fine, well, and good. They indicate where the problem is. But to understand the root cause of the problem, I'm going to look at my logs. So here in my summary tab, I have an option to open logs with the span ID or the trace ID. I want the span ID, and if you'll give me just a minute, I'll explain the difference between span ID and trace ID. But I want to grab the span ID. And when I open this up, it shows me the 2 logs associated with this. And the latest one is on the top. The earlier one's at the bottom. So down here, it says info, got new order, coffee, Americano, coffee amount, water, grams, how many things I need, so forth and so on. And then it threw an error. Sorry, I've got no water. So now I know that a 503 that's generated is because I don't have water. And so I want to make sure I've got water. So here I can very easily go from seeing a problem, and then I can see what caused that problem. And obviously I can, fix it immediately, but more importantly, I can see how often this occurs. Do I need to build a bigger water reservoir and things like that? How can I prevent this? Again, same thing with the beans and stuff. How do I fix that? But we're able to go from a problem to resolution here fairly quickly. And by the way, here in the lab, they have us walking through these various steps that I just walked through now. So we can very quickly and very easily use this tool to do that. Now, one thing that people get confused about all the time, and I certainly understand and I certainly appreciate it, is what's the difference between a span and a trace? Okay. When I look at the entire transaction, that's a trace. So when I look at the entire transaction, that's a trace. I, John Meredith, ordered coffee. That's trace ID coffee request 1 or coffee quest 1 or whatever. John Meredith's coffee. If Odell orders a cup of coffee, that would be coffee request 2, right? So the trace ID is the entire transaction end to end. And then the individual elements that make this up are the span. You know, I want to grind the beans, that's a span. I want to then dispense the water, that's a different span, and so forth and so on. So trace ID is my entire trace. A span ID is the subset of that, the individual microservice that's running for that particular trace ID. So I wanted to clarify that. Are there any questions about lab 2? Any questions at all? All right. What do you say we go ahead and take a break? What do you say we take a quick little 5-minute break? And I'm going to pop out my timer here. And when this timer gets down to 0, I'd like you to be back. So let's take a break. I'll see you back here in about 4 minutes and 54 seconds. Have a good break. Okay, folks, hopefully we are back and ready to roll. So we talked about service maps and showed you how a service map can show us the transactional states, a high view of the application environment. And we can then take those and look at the underlying traces that basically walk us through. So this is the exercise we did in lab 2 and traces and spans, and how we were able to walk through and see in these traces what is happening transaction wise, right? So that's basically what we did. And then spans, however, I haven't talked about yet. So let me walk through spans. Span analytics allow you and I under here, under spans, it allows you and I to write some quick little queries, okay? So for example, here, I could pick a certain status code, 502s, and let me go ahead and run this real quick. And so I can get all my 502s here if I want to. And then if I want to here, I can specify, you know, maybe I want to do a count, or I want to do a duration where my percentage is equal to 95%. And then if I want to here, maybe I want to group by time. And so when I'm sorry, I forgot to finish that group by time. Hang on a second. By time, I want to group it by 5 minutes. And then actually here, let me make this a bit bigger here as far as the time width. So this is kind of a tool that lets you kind of create visualizations real quick. So you can basically see what's going on. And again, you can, you know, see your metrics, see your errors, see your things. That's what the span editor does. So not too many questions on the span editor. You won't see any questions on that span editor, so don't worry about that. As far as the exam goes. Now, back to my slides for just a second. What we want to do is we want to talk a little bit here about how we can actually see logs and how we can use logs to identify problems. Okay, so we've got another hands-on exercise here, and you've already logged in. So sorry about that. Let me get through these slides. A bit slide heavy here. Sorry. Okay, we did all these. So here we go. Poll activity, traces, metrics, and logs. So what we want to do is we want to, you know, we've got an indicator. The metrics tell us what something's gone wrong with the app. What tool would you use if you want to find out the details of why things went wrong? And this is the part where I would expect you all to chime in the chat box and tell me that you want to focus on logs. Logs will always tell us what's wrong, right? So logs is the key to understanding what's wrong. So we're going to talk about observability with logs, and we're going to do exercise number 3. So let's go back here to our documentation. Exercise lab number 3, when logs are your best bet with observability. We're going to do a similar case that we did in lab 1. You're a site reliability engineer. You got an alert on an incident, right? The end users have been experiencing an outage in the coffee bar app last US East 1 over the last 24 hours. You get an alert that the problem's in the Lambda server. So we're going to do very much like we did in lab 1. We are going to go into our Sumo Logic environment. We are going to start in our Explorer. And again, let me close these all up because I really don't need them. We're going to go into our Explorer. And in our Explorer, we're going to go to AWS Observability. We're going to open up prod. We're going to open up US East 1. And this time, we're going to go down here to Lambda, AWS Lambda. And so when I look at my AWS Lambda, let me shrink this back a little bit, make it a little easier for me to see. I can see here my AWS Lambda overview. And again, there's a couple of other dashboards. I can see where my users are coming in from. I can see some performance indications, which I'll get to in just a little bit. I can see my top functions by durations, and I can see my successes and failures. Now, on my successes and failures, I've got over 7,819 errors over a 24-hour period. But if I look at these, this is listed in descending order. So my get billing info counted for 719 of those errors. In fact, it's the largest single producer of error. So what I want to do is I want to filter this function name for get billing info. So I could type in get underscore billing underscore info. And when I run this, it should automatically filter all of my data for get billing info. So now I see here 718 in the last 24 hours. Here's function by duration, get billing information. Again, I'm filtering this for this specific function. And obviously you can filter it for other functions if you want to. Now, the question is, what the heck's going on here? So I can see here that my get billing information has a lot of failures. In fact, if I remove this for a second, you'll see, let me just go ahead and bear with me a second. I'm gonna run this again. When I look at my successful versus failed requests, right? Everything had successes except this function. This function was completely failing, okay? There's some failures in these, but this one's completely failing. So again, I may want to focus my investigation on this particular function. Now, here's where it helps to know your individual dashboards. Because I could, if I want to, click on this one and open it up in a log search. I could go into this one and click on it and go into a log search. Or I could go into this one and click on it and go to a log search. The directions in your book tell you to use the chart. They tell you to use this one. I'm going to tell you, I'm not going to use that one. And the reason is what I want is I want to identify who the user was that changed this. So I'm going to go in here to this most frequent function operations. I'm going to click on this. I'm going to open it up in a log search. Now, this is the underlying log search that gave me my results. I had under get billing information in my event evoke 254, list functions 128, update function code 8, and update function configuration 5. Now, these are the different counts of errors that I got. But the update function configuration, if somebody changes that, logically, it would change and create these other errors, right? They're modifying my configuration. If they're modifying my code, that could also be one. So what I want to do here is I'm going to go into my messages. And in my field browser here, where I've got my field browser, if I click on this, I can see my various event names. Invoke, list functions, operate, so forth and so on. What I want to do is I want to modify this query by this particular value. So if I go into my field browser in my messages tab, and if I click on this, it adds a where clause. It adds a where clause to my query. And now I can see any message that I have associated with this particular function. And here I can see that Mark Smith modified my configuration, which ultimately resulted in this function now throwing errors. So I can find out from Mark, what did you change? Why did you change it, right? Memory size, what configuration modifications did he make? That sort of thing. And so I can sit there and then roll those changes back and restore this problem. So that is the exercise here on, again, using and working with my logs. My logs told me what's happening. And ultimately, I'm going to go back to my logs each and every time to find out really what's going on. Any questions about that? You're going to find there's a lot we can do with logs. So if I scroll down here and just bear with me a second here, okay, if I go in here, we can do a lot of things with logs. In fact, I'm going to jump into lab number 4, and I'm going to do this a little bit differently, right? You know, as I know, that I can take this code and I can copy it right in here, and I could paste it into my Sumo Logic environment as a log query. And I could run this. And basically what this is doing is going and grabbing my data from my CloudTrail environment. It's then extracting out my AWS region, and I've got it counting by this AWS region. So I can see where my messages are coming from. So out of my 3,164 messages, this is a breakdown. Most of them are coming from US West 1. Fair number are coming from US East 1. Now, we can write queries to make our life much easier. So if I go back here, and if I want to say, look at my snort logs, my security logs, so bear with me a second while I change things up a little bit. Snort logs. And if I look, say, over the last 60 minutes, okay, let's run it for 60 minutes. Here I am seeing a lot of issues, right? I'm seeing issues where people are accessing my config.cnf file and PHP files, and there's my config.cnf file again. One of the things I don't want to do is go through all of these logs, these 6,200 messages over the last hour. So what I can do with Sumo Logic is I can simply click on log reduce, and log reduce will then combine my like messages together. So now I'll get a better sense for what the problem is. So out of my 6,224 messages, 3,131, almost 50%, are this message right here. Somebody modified my config.conf file. Now, when I investigate this, I realize it's not that somebody went in and tried to hack at a file. We did a software upgrade. And because we did a software upgrade, it modified that file. So that's why that message shows up a number of times. Now, if I don't have either of these little buttons selected, it gives me a relevant score. But since I investigated this and found out that this was purely accidental by doing an upgrade, I can demote its relevant score to 0 or maximize it to 10 if I want to by clicking on either one of these two things. So I want to try to tell folks who are looking at this report that this was really an insignificant event. So I can, you can, we can adjust these thumbs ups and thumbs down arrows to do some of that stuff. Then I could look at my next thing, a web application attack. I can investigate, see what's going on. If I want to, I can look at the 1,596 messages that made this up. And in those 5,699 messages, maybe I want to look by a specific host. These are all coming from the same host. So maybe I want to look, plus or minus so many minutes. I can investigate this a little deeper and see what's happening. Okay. So you guys can see how we can use logs and the power of Sumo to really investigate and see more details into our logs. Now, not only can I do a log reduce and combine my log messages, I can also do a log compare, and that's usually a better way of seeing if you got security issues. You want to compare one time period to another time period. So if you don't mind, I'm going to change this a little bit. I'm going to change this line. Instead of going back 24 hours, I'm going to go back 7 days, 7D, and I'm going to rerun it again. Now, what's going on? It's going to go look at my snort logs for the last 60 minutes, and it's going to do a log reduce on that. Then it's going to go back 7 days, go back 60 minutes and do a log reduce on that. Then it's going to compare the two. So here it's compared the two and said, hey, about this config.conf file, it hasn't changed much. It went down maybe 1%, not very significant. This one went up 2%, again, not very significant. This one went down 11%, not significant in the right direction. This went up 24%, but it's a fairly low number. So these numbers tell me how much it changed between my current time and then my time shift, which in this case was last week. Now, another thing you might notice in here, if you go in here, you might see the word new. New means it wasn't there before, but it is there now. So it's new. And then you also might see the word gone. Gone means it was there before in my previous time period, but it's not there now. So you and I can use log reduce and log compare to kind of organize like messages and see if they've changed much within a certain periodicity. And that's what we're trying to show you here in these labs, log reduce and log compare on pages 28 and 29. Okay. Then there's also one here called log explain. And you know what? Let's do log explain by doing a simple Google search, right? I'm in Google here, right? I want to search for something. Sumo Logic, log explain. Log explain, Sumo Logic, there it is. So what log explain does is it basically lets me create a set of data that I'm going to compare other sets of data with. So I'm going to create a certain data set, and then I want to compare another data set against that data to see what's happening. That's what log explain does, right? You have a normal baseline of environments or baseline of things, and that's your normal set of data. You want to compare another environment to see how it behaves. If you've got AWS environments, Azure environments, Google Cloud Platform environments, you know, you've got an environment that you like that's working well for you and all that stuff. You want to compare it against another environment to see what's happening. So again, this explains what log explain does. I'm not going to get into it too much, but just going to point out that the documentation exists. Okay. And so this is the kind of stuff that you and I can see with our logs. This is the information that you and I can see with our logs. So far in this class, we've talked about the root cause explorer. We've talked about the other explorer. We've talked about traces, spans, service map. We talked about the value of our, using query against the logs, all kinds of fun stuff, all kinds of powerful stuff here that you can use. Okay. So let me just go ahead and wrap up this course here and see what questions you guys have. And then we'll turn you on to the exam. All right, so summary, here we go, right? With observability, you can now observe an app from the outside and inside to see what's happening inside of it, right? If you need to track a transaction from end to end, you can do that now. Tracing is what we can use. Metrics provide us an insight to cause a spike, tell us what's happened to the spike. We'll see the spike using metrics, and then ultimately we'll look back into our logs to see what caused the spike. Logs obviously provide the information about who, what, where, when, how, right? Logs provide us that comprehensive system detail of what happened and what caused that failure. All right. And then, of course, logs and metrics, while different in nature, complement each other in providing us this observability information. What questions have you with regards to the content of this course? Just so you know, tomorrow, the class is going to be observability administration. And in observability administration, we're going to go through 3 major exercises. The first is, you are going to, how we set up here in Sumo Logic, when I go into my Explorer tab, we have this AWS observability. Well, tomorrow, you're going to install an AWS environment, which, by the way, means that you need to have an AWS account. You need to have an AWS account, but we're going to install AWS observability. We're going to install this node here. And we're also going to install a bunch of dashboards and stuff like that using a CloudFormation template. See these right here with the dashboards and all that fun stuff. So that's one thing we're going to do tomorrow. The second thing we're going to do tomorrow is we are going to stand up and configure a Kubernetes environment. And then we're going to set up tracing on that Kubernetes environment. And we're going to set up tracing on a non-Kubernetes environment. So the observability fundamentals class that you just had is showing you how the tool works and all that stuff. Tomorrow I'll be showing you how this stuff gets set up. And so tomorrow, if you want to see how it all gets set up, come on and join us. As I mentioned, you do need to have an AWS account. If you don't, it's okay. You just won't be able to do some of those labs because you'll need to be able to set up an AWS environment using your credentials, your account. I will set one up that you guys can play with. So if you don't have an account, you can still see what's going on. And then, as I said, we're going to do a bunch of command lines to set up our Kubernetes cluster. If you already have a Kubernetes cluster and all you really want to do is open it up to OpenTelemetry, it's 2 commands and it's done. But since tomorrow we won't have a Kubernetes cluster, I'll have to install a Kubernetes cluster. That will take up some time. And then we're going to show you how you can set up a system for OpenTelemetry so that you and I can go in here to service map. We can get tracing information in the service map, and we can go into that information and we can see what's happening. Okay, so we'll show you how that stuff gets done tomorrow. So that's where tomorrow's class leads. Just wanted to let you know in case. And of course, it has a certification exam. Are there any questions, folks, before I turn you loose and get you ready to take the exam? Okay. To take the exam, again, you're going to want to log out of our training environment. Log out again, click on this navigation panel over here on the left. If it's not already open, click on it. Click on your name down here in the corner, training analyst, whatever. Click on it and click sign out. And that will sign you out of Sumo Logic. Then I want you to go to your company's environment and I want you to log in with whatever credentials they provided for you. So you want to log in from your company's environment. And when you do that, you should be able to click on Home, Certification, Get Certified. And here's where our exams are. They are in an area called Get Certified. If you click on this Get Certified, you'll see all of our exams. The exam that you want is the Observability Fundamentals exam. The Observability Fundamentals exam. And if you click on it, you'll have to register, which is a pretty instantaneous thing. Boom, I'm registered. And then here, before you start, this exam only has 20 questions, not 30. So you got 20 questions and you got 60 minutes to complete it. And you don't have to score a 75, you'll have to score a 70. So this is a new exam for us. We want to give you the benefit of the doubt here a little bit, make it a little easier. As you know, if I click next here, it will then get ready to start my exam. It will take me to my exam questions. And whenever I'm ready to start, I can go ahead and click here. Now, one thing, if you ever want to go back to the other exam questions that are here, you can click on this little ellipse and jump back and forth to the other questions if you want. Okay. That's how you jump back and forth to the various questions that you want to do. Now, which entities are highlighted in the root cause explorer? AWS host, Kubernetes, application service. There we go. Click next. What are the levels of AWS observability hierarchy used in the root cause explorer? Levels of hierarchy. Again, I can go back to that lovely observability fundamental root cause explorer sheet that I pointed out to you, and I could do a search for levels of observability to find the answer to that question. I believe it is that one. I may be wrong. Okay. So anyway, I'm going through these questions, having myself a good old time. Now, when I am done, if I collapse this up, I can submit my answers. And I'm going to submit my answers. And of course, I'm going to fail because I only answered 2 questions. But I can see what I got right and what I got wrong. So when I go into questions, the first one I got right, which I knew I would. The second one I got wrong. So I didn't look at the documentation. It's right there. Bottom line is that, again, you can see what you got right, you got wrong. And when you're done, you can say submit results. So it writes it to your profile up here. So that's the exam and how you basically take it. Are there any questions, ladies and gentlemen? Then on behalf of myself and everybody at Sumo Logic, I want to thank you all for taking the time to be with us today. Hope you guys got out of the class what you wanted to. And I'll be quiet here. I'll turn the recording off and I'll be quiet and let you guys take the exam. Odell and I will be here in case you have any questions. Otherwise, please have a great day. Please be safe. We hope to see you in the class again real soon. Bye now.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.